pieces and parts of the contract. We're on sections 5 and 6. My name is John Dyer. I'm your managing broker. And as I always start any contract class, I believe you have a fiduciary duty to do perfect paperwork. That doesn't mean good paperwork. That doesn't mean okay paperwork. It means perfect. If you make a mistake, every mistake you make can potentially damage your client. Your job is to put your client first because you're a fiduciary. I believe you need to practice. I believe that problem solving is a skill for losers. I believe you need to practice problem avoidance. You need to practice potentially paranoid, preemptive, prepared problem prevention. How to do that? Perfect paperwork. What's the most important document we deal with? The purchase contract. This is it. This is our. If we were a carpenter, this is our hammer, which should really scare you because there's a substantial amount of realtor carpenters out there that are holding the head and hitting the nail with a stick end because they don't know any better. I've taken a survey for many years at what percentage of agents are actually qualified to write a purchase contract based on 3 embarrassingly low standard criteria. You've read it 50 times. If I ask you a question, you can tell me what section the answer's in, and if there's been any recent case law, you've read it and know how it could affect your client. That's like the minimum standard. It's embarrassing. I should make it about 10 times more difficult than that. But based on that, for 20 years plus years, the consensus has been only 2% of real estate agents who are legally licensed to practice law under Article 26 of the Arizona State Constitution are actually qualified to write a purchase contract. That should terrify you if you're in the 2%. It should embarrass you if you're not. I always like to say to people, if your forms get rejected by the broker, people go, it's really annoying. You shouldn't be annoyed. You should be embarrassed. It means you made a mistake, which means you put your client at risk. This is a legally binding document. It's the most amount of money most people ever sign away with one signature. It's the most financial liability. If they have a loan, most people ever sign their name for in their life. It's up there in the highest legal liability people ever take on in their life. It's a pretty big deal, and we are a fiduciary, an agent, a person in a position of absolute trust in dealing with other people's money, and we are legally obligated to put their interests first, which means before ours. It's not about the commission. We are in the service business. But we can't do our job if we don't know our hammer, and this is the hammer. The section 5 and 6, I like sections 5 and 6. I like to take a little more time on them because if you get sued and lose, or if your buyer gets burned and has to sue someone, there's a very good chance it's going to be a result of something having to do with section 5 and 6, or maybe a little tail from section 4. One of the things I always like to talk about in every class, and this is going back to last class, but it sets up for section 5, is the business with a seller property disclosure statement, the SPUDs. I believe if you put a house on the market without a SPUDs, you are absolutely hurting your seller. Seller property disclosure statement is a seller protection disclosure statement. In no way does waiving it release them from anything. Waiving SPUDs says in court, I know, but I'm not telling. Their obligation to disclose is still there. So if you don't have a SPUDs, I'll waive SPUDs all day long. I'm going to call you the next day and say, okay, I want a list of everything your seller knows about their property that's material that may affect the compensation my buyer would pay. And they go, you waived that. And I laugh and say, no, you're stupid. I didn't waive it. I waived a form. I waived a form that your seller could have used to protect themselves. And they had the ability on that form to leave it blank and say, yes, no, or leave it blank, says, I don't know, you figure it out. Not delivering a SPUD says, I know, and I'm not telling. And that's how the courts have looked at it. And that's why it's important to know some case law. Because the courts looks at it, if you don't deliver SPUDs, you're hiding something. It's basically a shot in your seller's foot. And sellers are not saying they don't want to do SPUDs. Agents are advising them that. If you're one of those agents, stop it. So here's the situations where you should not have a SPUDs. REO, because there ain't a damn bank on the planet that's going to do one for you, and they are exception to rules. A bankruptcy that's court, because the courts aren't going to do that. unless it's an owner-occupied bankruptcy. Then they're owner-occupied, they still should do a spuds, because why go bankrupt, finish your bankruptcy, and then get sued because you didn't do a spuds, and now you're in deep trouble financially with the courts again. Probate is one that makes sense. Because if my mom, God rest her soul, should pass away, I have known nothing about her house, but I would be the seller probably. So that makes sense. Wait, REO, probate, that's it. What is not a reason to not deliver a spuds? And not, pardon me?
Question on the probate. But even if somebody is, you're the correct word for that word with probates.
The beneficiary.
The beneficiary of the property, and although you don't have all of the knowledge,
I still say fill out, answer 16 questions, and the rest of you say I don't know. But someone in a probate situation is actually someone that can say, I know diddly, because they have no reason to know. Here's what I know about my mom's house. It's old and I know her address. Actually, I don't even know her address anymore because I've been there so many times. I just drive there. So that'd be a situation. The bottom line is, here are the excuses I get for not doing a seller property disclosure statement. And when we talk about Section 5A, I'm just going to go back and beat this up again. Seller never occupied the property. That's a stupid, stupid reason not to do a spuds. It's inexcusable and it makes no sense because my friend Mark's sitting right here. I don't know where Mark's living. I've never been to his house. But if I got Mark's address, I could complete 16 to 20 questions on a spuds in 10 minutes by hopping on a damn computer. It ain't rocket science. And the ones I leave blank give me the benefit of saying, you ask, I'm telling you in writing, I don't know. And if it matters to you, you got 10 days to figure that stuff out. You got 5 days to cancel if you don't like it. Failure to deliver spuds is not a good thing because when it comes to the duty to disclose, it's not just on the contract. It's in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different Arizona statutes and laws. It's a big deal. Why? Because we threw caveat emptor out a long time ago, and a buyer has a right to know what the seller knows. Must disclose anything that may material affect. The spuds front page says, if you don't do this, doesn't matter, you still have to disclose everything on it. It is a myth and ridiculous that people think waiving spuds releases disclosure obligation. That is 100% false. My other favorite is I'm a flipper. I don't do a spuds. That is just plain stupid and a lie. For a flipper to say they don't know much about the house is a bald-faced lie because I tell you what, I've done flips. And I knew more about the house than anyone ever lived there because everything was money to me. Flippers get in walls. Flippers look at crap no one who lived there ever cared about because it's money. So it's complete baloney. Now we're really going to talk about why you always deliver a spuds because spuds is in Section 4. Let's start with Section 5. Warranties. First of all, if you're out there in internet world or anyone in this room that's still using the as-is addendum, stop it. Since February, we got rid of warranted items. Section 5A is about to tell you all contracts are as-is. An as-is addendum is a superfluous, redundant document, and it makes you look dumb that you don't know not to put a document that's on there. And please don't make yourself look dumb, because when I review your file, I may giggle at you a lot. Section 5. Condition of the premises. Buyer and seller agree that the premises are being sold in its present physical condition as of the date of contract acceptance. What does that say?
It is
as is. Now, we do have an issue here, though, because there's a lot of people want to argue. You guys are too young to remember this. People want to argue what the meaning of as is. You guys don't remember Bill Clinton. Depends on what the meaning of is. Because as is sounds like two-letter words. It can't be that complicated. You'd be surprised the stupid arguments I have over the meaning of as it is. What as is means is exactly the way it was at the moment of contract acceptance. As simple as that. Those 2 letters got him off. So did Monica, but that's a story for another week. All right. Seller makes no warranty to buyer either express or implied as to the condition, zoning, fitness, or particular use of the premises. However, seller shall maintain the premise of the earlier close of escrow or possession of premises, including all personal property which is listed and included in the contract, will be in substantially the same condition as of date of contract acceptance. Now, What that means is, I'm buying the property as is of the moment the contract is accepted. That means as soon as that contract is accepted, anything that changes or would have required disclosure or has to be repaired to put it back in substantially the same condition is there. Literally the moment the contract is signed, the entire property, border to border, slab to the sky, is warranted. Anything that goes wrong that changes it, to the negative, I assume. I guess if you decide to secretly install a swimming pool and they get 20 grand worth of stuff, I guess that's a good thing. But no, anything that goes wrong, it's not a discussion to have when it goes wrong. It's not a discussion to be had at walkthrough. It's a decision made when they signed the contract. When they signed the contract, they decided that they would take on the responsibility to deliver it substantially the same condition. Here's the problem with that. We're not explaining that to sellers, and every now and then, somebody gets a mistaken impression that as is means as is of the date, as of the date of closing. Now I want you to stop and think a second about what I just said. That means the seller can literally kick the crap out of the house, paint weird things on the wall, leave dead chickens in the living room, and the buyer would have to take it because it's as is as of close of escrow. And yes, I've actually had even a designated broker have that argument with me. Substantially the same condition means anything that changes must be corrected or repaired, and per section 4F, anything that changes from last week must be disclosed to the buyer. The SPUDS is updated, and here's what's bad about the water heater busting 4 days before close of escrow. The seller must fix it, obviously, but he also must disclose to the buyer, updating the SPUDS. The buyer has 5 days to cancel. So if the buyer's got cold feet, wants out of the damn deal, and the water heater bust, or I've seen things as simple as they took something off the wall, and the wall was a lot nastier behind what they took off than they expected, and it's 2 different color wall because it's been on that picture bin, the paint been there. Is that grounds to require them to update the SPUDS? Sure, because anything that costs 1 penny is material. And you're thinking, well, what's material? There's one list of material that's a no-brainer. If it costs money, it's material. And by the way, there's a couple of areas of material that you always need to put at the front of the list. I had someone ask me a question this morning, and when I get good questions, I like to share with my classes. And this would be back in the disclosure category. A really mean dog next door that jumps the fence and scares people. Is that material, must that be disclosed? Yeah, for lots of reasons. The biggest reason is if anything you ever run across has the word safety involved, you want that disclosed, because safety means what in court? If you're a personal injury lawyer, that's an extra 0. If something falls on you at a store, that's a lot of money for a lawyer. But if it falls on you in a store and they knew it was unsafe before it fell on you, that's an extra. That lawsuit goes from $1 million to 10. That's what we're talking about. All right. As is until signed, then warranted, wall to wall. All right. All personal property, not including sale and debris, will be removed as from the premises. Myth. Property must be delivered clean and broom swept. That is a myth. That is a lie. Should a seller, who's a courteous human being, leave a property in decent condition for someone to move in? Yes. Is a seller that's got a vacant house that's a piece of junk, that's been on the market a long time, that somehow or another pine needles found its way in, have to remove those pine needles? Yes. Why? It's debris. Are they going to? No. Make sure your sellers understand their obligations, okay? Here we go.
I got a question real quick.
All right.
And this is, you have TVs now. People have TVs, they're mounted on the walls, there's television brackets.
Strange that you should bring that up. Section 1G, line 46, on the right side, 3rd column to the right. Does that freak you out yet? You can check it.
Which section?
It clearly states, a wall-mounted TV like that, the TV's personal property does not stay, but the wall mounts are a fixture and must. And here's why we did that, because I was part of that decision. Here's why we did that. If you remove a wall mount's clearly a fixture, it's clearly attached, and if you remove it, The cost of putting that wall back the way it was before you ever hung that mount there is often more than the cost of the wall. On our mastermind, we had a big long discussion about that. And I've seen someone have to paint an entire room because the paint was really old and ugly, and oh well, the only way is to get it back. So the seller's typically better off leaving it. If they're going to take it, they should take it down before they put the house on the market and do all the repairs. So the buyer, if it's shoddy patchwork, the buyer's buying shoddy patchwork. Because if you get down 3 days before closing and walk through it, they don't like the patchwork, the buyer has extreme leverage to bail on the transaction, to squeeze the seller. And by the way, at walkthrough, this is a game we play. It's built right in. On issues like that, a lot of times it's extortion. It's extortion, seller saying, up yours, I ain't gonna fix it, I don't care if you cancel. Knowing that the buyer has a moving van sitting out in front of the title company, has a choice, close the damn deal or be homeless. Or a buyer going, really? I understand you got another deal closing and you need the proceeds from this. Up yours, fix it or I walk. And a buyer can walk over the most ridiculous little things. That would be one of them, because 3 days before close of escrow is very clear.
I have a question. Which section you say?
Do what?
The section 6.
That's
Where
the
can I
first-
find?
yeah,
Huh?
Oh, it's section 1G, line 46, all the way to the right. It says wall mount brackets, print parenthetically excluding television.
Thank you.
All right. Where did we leave off? So they have to clean up the property. It doesn't have to be broom swept. It doesn't have to be clean. If you want a property clean, and I do this, if it's a beautiful property and the people live there obviously have Kelly's OCD, then it's not a big deal. But if the property has some issues and it's got a bunch of kids and cats or whatever, then I'm going to put in the contract, property be professionally cleaned before close of escrow. And I've never had anybody balk at that, because that takes the seller knows I can spend $125 and never have these people come back and whine at me. It's not a big deal.
You get the same problem coming up, you guys, if you're not saying in 3 days, say 3 days before the close of escrow, right? Because now you have a chance to inspect. But if they just say, okay, well, we didn't do it, and it's close to escrow, and it's the same thing going back to extortion.
But you know what, the beauty of that is, if seller doesn't do things that are on the cure 3 days prior to close of escrow, you take them to small claims court, you will win. I mean, and because a buyer's considered at that point to being under duress. A lot of times when the buyer finds out something's wrong in their life, in their process, as I like to say, the genie's out of the bottle. That's not the problem. The bottle's broken. There's no place for them to go back to, so they go to court and say, I had to move into this piece of crap they were supposed to clean, all dirty, and it cost me a bunch of money, and I was delayed, I had to stay in a hotel room. Your Honor, they didn't abide by the contract, it cost me money, I was under duress to close, and watch the money go up. That's why anybody says they're not going to do something on the walk, I say, it's fine. We're going to close, and here's what I'm going to advise my buyer to do. Hire the most expensive contractor in town, hire the most expensive lawyer in town, and spend about $1,200 in legal fees to take your client to small claims court for $250. And by the way, as long as it's under $5 grand, don't get those damn legal fees. And by the way, it's not just a threat, that's case law. Now, our small claim courts are, let's just say, extremely friendly to buyers and really don't like sellers. Our contract is extremely friendly to buyers. Our contract basically, is anti-seller. I mean, we used to have caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. It's been replaced with caveat venditor, bend over. Let the seller get bent. I mean, it's horrible. Oh, by the way, go Croatia.
Yeah.
For those of you that got to watch a little cup today, or if you guys were in class, Croatia beat England. They're in the finals for FIFA against France. The only thing it would have been fun to watch England play France, because that's like a war that's been going on for 2,200 years. But way to go, Croatia. They were fourth from the bottom in expectation to win. So that's like a NCAA 11 seed getting in. Cool. Plus, I saw them make 2 of the coolest goals I've ever seen. That has nothing to do with this.
That's nice.
But it's FIFA, so we must talk. All right, where are we? We're going to remove all debris. They don't have to clean it. And I've literally had agents cure. The reason I brought that up, I had agents issue a cure notice and said the property was not professionally cleaned. I said they removed the debris. It's in substantially the same condition. Kiss off. And they go, well, I won't let my buyers close a dirty home. I'm like, you have no power. One of the things that really bothers me is when agents say, I won't let my client. We don't let our clients do things. We advise them of their rights in the position, And then they do whatever the hell they want. We are not relevant. You know, it's amazing how many agents want to speak and decide for their client. It's amazing how many things the agent says, my client will never do that. And when they call the client says, I don't care. I just want to close the damn deal. And they start a hassle, it doesn't matter. So remember, you don't do anything without your client's instructions. Part of the cargo, the fiduciary, is obedience. We're not allowed to do anything our client doesn't tell us to. All right. Buyers advised to conduct independent inspections and investigations regarding the premises within the inspection period as specified in Section 6A. Buyer and seller acknowledge and understand that they may, but are not obligated to engage in negotiations for repairs and improvements to the premises. Any and all agreed upon repairs will be addressed pursuant to Section 6J. The end of Section 6. We used to have a thing called warranted items. Plumbing, electrical, HVAC, and mechanical were, if they were broken, the seller had already agreed to fix it per the contract. We took them out. We got rid of basically a page of the Benzer, a section of the Benzer, and it was the stupidest thing we've ever done. What's really sad is why we got rid of warranted items and went back to as is has nothing to do with how making it better for everyone. It was because agent incompetence. Agents were so bad at telling their sellers what a warranted item was that they didn't get it right. Agents are still bad at telling their sellers the entire property is warranted after acceptance, which to me seems like a no-brainer. If I buy a house, I get to move into the house I bought, substantially the same condition. But there is no such thing. Now everything's negotiable, right down to plumbing, electric, HVAC, mechanical. There are certain things that I think raise to the level of habitability. It's 100 and holy hell degrees outside right now with humidity that reminds me of my home in Baton Rouge. Okay? Air conditioner is not an option. It's a thing. So there's nothing to stop you in Section 8 of the contract writing back in warranted items. Okay? Seller agrees to deliver HVAC, plumbing, electrical, mechanical in working condition as of close of escrow. You can write it right back in. You create a condition that is subject to cure. You'd be surprised how many agents won't even notice that that's in there. Okay?
Yeah.
You're talking about section, what, 8?
Yeah, because you have to type it in. If you need that, if you ever decide to do that, you need the clause, email me and I'll send it to you.
We've tried that a few times and it just confuses the heck out of people. And it's like, in my experience, it's been like, okay, you know what, this is creating so much more of my time trying
Next
to
one.
explain it to
Then
the
you get an
other
inspection
agent,
period and deal with
and
it
I'm
then.
like, screw it, yeah, I'm just like, so I stopped using it.
So you do that regardless of what, like, because that's prior to inspections anyway, so you're doing that on all of them?
Yeah, I say those issues working is not a discussion had at closing, it's a decision made the day you sign the contract. You already agreed that if the AC breaks, you will fix it. If it's found to be deficient on inspection, I don't have to ask you to fix it. You already agreed, and that's what warranted items were.
So, okay.
That's why I missed them. But the good news about big ticket items, and the good news about big ticket items in failure to disclose or them not working, here's the problem. If you come to me on inspections and tell me that the AC is not working, and you're going to cancel because of it, I'm going to have to fix the damn thing anyway, because I put it back on the market with a broken AC. I have to disclose, even people that wave spuds, that the AC is broken, and they're going to say, well, I ain't going to buy a house with a broken AC. So there is a certain amount of leverage on big issues. Same thing with a leak. I've had sellers say I won't fix a leak. That's just dumb. Why is it dumb to not fix a leak?
Because you have them floods and
And they get worse.
Right.
And they get in walls, and they ruin drywall, and they grow this nasty stuff called mold. I mean, there's certain times where it's just common sense. There's no reason to be stubborn. And by the way, we actually allow logic in real estate. But it's like a treasure hunt. Have fun finding it. It hides really good.
So I do have a question on that note with representing sellers and.
I'm deaf, talk loud.
So we'll represent the seller and his buyer does an inspection, finds that there's a leak, major leak, seller refuses to fix it, I represent the seller, we're telling him or her to put it on the spuds, they refuse to put it on there. At that point, we have the option to fire them, or what would be the right way to handle that seller? If they refuse to fix it, refuse to
tell them
disclose
that
it.
to be sued.
Okay. We're going to talk off the record on camera, okay?
Okay.
You tell your seller they're stupid because they're actually what the money they don't spend will multiply itself in what will eventually cost them. Should the leak get worse, should a buyer buy it and find it after closing, should there be mold with children in the house, then you're going away from a few hundred to thousands and thousands of
How
dollars.
about this, how about when a seller says, well, why don't you take, why don't you cut it on your commission? Why don't you cut it?
Oh, that's real answer to me. My answer is always, they don't say can't cover kisses. I haven't been paid yet.
I know, but I'm just telling you what goes on in the real world, right? A seller's gonna tell you, well, let's see, I'm supposed to pay you, 15 grand in this thing, right? And so, you know what, you wanna sell this house? Yeah, I do. You wanna get your money in 2 days? Yeah, I do.
I would stand my ground.
I know it, but it happens.
I would say I'd say I got another 6 months left on this listing, and here's what's going to happen: this deal will fall through. You don't want to disclose, but here's the problem with it: if your seller refuses to disclose something on the spuds, and you know it, you are legally obligated to disclose it against your seller's wishes. Because one thing about agency, our seller, even your broker, cannot give you instructions to break the law, and you break the law and say my seller told me to. So that's the other leverage I have. I said, that's fine. I got your house tied up for 6 months, and by the way, anyone who looks at it, I'm going to have to tell them about the leak. I legally have to, and my license means more to me than your money. And so let's do the right thing here and stop being stupid. And people who know me knows I will look at my seller right in the eye and say, you're just being stupid
Okay,
because
so,
I speak English.
so and I've never been in this situation, but I'm playing devil's advocate here. So he refuses to do it. I still have the listing. I legally disclose it via an email, via the report,
Yeah.
all of the above. Okay.
If you have an inspection report, everything on it must be disclosed to subsequent buyers. So at that point, literally, the seller's being stupid because they're taking that BB they shot themselves in the foot with, and they're turning it into a 44 Magnum. Either way, they're shooting themselves in the foot, but one's going to hurt a lot worse than the other. All right.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. Here we go. Any more questions on that? As is. The moment it's signed, the entire property is warranted. Anything that changes, anything that changes falls under 2 criteria. One, it must be fixed. They are agreed to fix it the day they sign the contract per Section 5A, and it must be disclosed. And that's what sucks because they have to update the spuds, and the buyer has 5 days to cancel. All right. Now, we've talked about spuds, we're talking about Section 4. We did Section 4 in the last session. Let's talk about the part of the contract that doesn't talk about how you disclose. See, that's where people get screwed up in their head. Section 4 does not talk about legal disclosure obligations. What does it talk about? Things that should be disclosed because they're material, like insurance history and stuff like that, and how they are disclosed. If you can find in Section 4 where it says you have to disclose and explains that, you can read it between the lines. But in Section 5, so when people waive spuds, they think they waive this. It's a different section of the contract. Watch. Seller warrants that seller has disclosed to buyer and broker all material latent defects and information concerning promises, excluding opinions of value which may materially affect the consideration paid by the buyer, period. Does it say seller will do that, and if they waive spuds, the seller doesn't have to? No. That is the idiotic myth that everyone's living on. And I literally have agents been in business 3 years tell me I'm wrong. That I learned to have I've had people instructors and brokers that teach their agents to not do spuds because it increases their seller's liability. You know why sellers don't do spuds? Because agents are freaking lazy. It makes no sense because all that Section 4 is a list of things that fall under the absolutely material category and how they're going to be disclosed on a thing called a seller proper disclosure statement. The duty to disclose is clearly stated in a complete different section of the contract. Waiving a form in Section 4 does not nullify the terms of Section 5B. Are you getting my point yet? I get kind of preachy on this subject because it's an epidemic. 1 out of 4 contracts, I would guess, and I review lots of them, 1 out of 4 contracts probably waives seller proper disclosure statement. And that means 1 out of 4 agents, I hate their seller. They're bad agents. They're breaching their fiduciary to their seller. And if you're one of our agents, please stop. All right. What is material? What is a latent defect? First of all, let's talk about the simple legal definition of a latent defect. You know what a latent defect is? A defect that happened after the moment the certificate of occupancy was delivered. It's something wrong with the house that's latent. It's after it started, okay? If you develop a disease after you're born, that disease could fall in the category of latent. It means any material defect that wasn't literally there. And since none of us know when a house was built, in other words, what does it cover? What's the definition of material? What things are material? Here's the list. John Dyer's material filter. If it's a matter of money, must be disclosed. How much money?
$1.
I'm going to go with $1. And I say $1 because one of the things that comes up on home inspections all the time, so a seller should disclose it, is that there's not an anti-siphon valve on the stupid spigot outside, and inspectors make me, because they have to put it in there because it's a health and safety thing, but they're $4.85. I know, I used to carry a box of them around when I was selling, because I got tired of the inspector goes, here. Don't have to put down an inspection report now, because a buyer could literally cancel over a $5 part. It's a matter of money. If it's physical, and here's when I talk about physical, I'm literally talking about the 5 senses. If you can see it, if it's ugly, it's or broken, must be not ugly, but if it's broken, must be disclosed. You can see that it's wrong. If you can hear it, must be disclosed. What would you hear that needs to be disclosed?
Airplanes.
Airplanes, the big dog, because you don't just hear them, you feel them. A fire police station next door. Why? Because that will disturb people's sleep. If you're near a train track, our trains don't run as often as they do other places, but when they come by, you know they're there. I stayed in a hotel downtown one time. I used to live not too far from a train, so twice a night the house would do this when I was little. But I was in a hotel, and for a minute there, I thought we're having an earthquake in downtown Phoenix. Then I realized it was a damn train shaking the building. Yeah.
I live close to Luke Air Force. I have to disclose that.
That's what we're talking about, because that's obviously noise. That's literally the airport noise is what it's about. And there's a specific disclosure for that. If you do within Luke, we have a map. If you're within Surprise, you not only have to have that map,
Carried on.
you have to carry it with you. I literally had an H in my class that was the first person I heard got fined $175 because they didn't have a stupid map in their car. Which I, by the way, would take to the Supreme Court as unconstitutional. I don't believe a municipality has that much power to infringe upon what and require us to carry things in our car that don't have to do with the safety of driving, but that's just my constitutionality, yeah.
Does it have to be a paper form, or can it be accessible through your phone?
What are you talking about?
No.
The Luke Air Force Base.
We want it signed. So it has to be a form because we want it signed.
No, but he's talking
No.
about
In the car, so you don't get
surprise
fined.
for the
Oh.
surprise.
Oh God, I don't know. I
I
would-
Come on, broker.
I have it on my iPad. What? I haven't been pulled over yet.
And I think you should be showing the clients with you, right?
Yeah.
No, they said you're always working, though.
Yeah, it's just one of those silly little things. Just if you're
throw
selling
it in.
surprise, stick one in your damn glove compartment and hope you never need it. Because if you need it, that not only means you're glad you have it, it means you got pulled over by a cop. Because I don't think they're actually pulling people over to check. That would certainly be a violation of the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, clear and simple, unreasonable search and seizure.
This map thing's got me kind of weird about. What are you talking about, map? You have to have a map?
If you
about-
show property in Surprise, you have to have a Luke Air Force Base noise area map thingy in your car to be able to show property in Surprise per Surprise city law. That's why I say I think it's unconstitutional.
Okay, I'm not worried about it.
So what else is material? If it's cost money, if it's physical, we've covered eyes, we've covered hearing. What about smell? Abso-freaking-lutely. Let me take you out and show you houses in Santan Valley. You really want to know about the cattle farm out there, because when the winds change, and literally the monsoon brings the stink. When the winds change, that cow poop is blowing right through town, and obviously it smells. We have a situation in Buckeye where someone was not told that because it's seasonal. And after they lived there a while, all of a sudden the stank came, and they were talking to a neighbor, and the neighbor said, well, the people that lived here before moved because of smell, but they didn't disclose it. By the way, you know what lawyers call that?
Yeah.
Easy money. If your motivation is something that would be required to be disclosed and you don't disclose it, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot again. So smell matters. If you're by anybody ever been near a a rendering plant where they slaughter animals? I grew up down the street from one, trust me, you want that disclosed. So we've covered see, hear, smell, feel. You know, if you can feel it, it must be disclosed. If it's physical, it must be disclosed. If you can taste it, does it have to be disclosed? You know, I say yes. You know why? Because that's my friend in Santan Valley that I was talking about when it changes the wind. You actually don't just smell it. You have a film in your mouth. It's disgusting.
Come on.
By the way, it's a beautiful, huge, nice house with a 2-acre lot, all grass. And we play poker outdoors until the season. And then you can't even, people won't even go outside to smoke a cigarette. It's so nasty. It's crazy.
Nothing.
Not fun. All right. What else is material? If it's an issue of quiet enjoyment, it's material. I just talked about noise. Quiet enjoyment does not refer to noise. Quiet enjoyment refers to, it's one of the covenants of a deed. It refers to your ability to quietly enjoy your ownership, your title and deed, without interruption by outside parties. What is title insurance? Title insurance is quiet enjoyment insurance. That's why we buy it. But there are issues that are not necessarily title insured that are quiet enjoyment issues. The greatest restriction, and by the way, voluntary restriction on quiet enjoyment, is homeowners association. Obviously, they affect how you possess your property, how you use your property, how you can paint your property, okay? And they have powers over your deed, because if you don't pay your HOA dues, they come and take your house. Have somebody heard trying to deal with help out last week. Their homeowner association was taking their house away. It's a $400,000 house. I think they were taking it over $9,000. People were broke, and they owed a lot of money. I think the HOA is insane because they're going to take over a house that they're going to have to short sale. Why would an HOA want to own a house that they have to short sale? But HOAs are a bunch of Nazis
Why would
anyway.
they have to short sell? Was it upside down?
Because they owe so much money, they're taking over a property. They're subordinate to the loan. They're not property. You know, if the county takes over for taxes, the loan's subordinate to them. HOA's in line. They're a subordinate lien. So I just can't figure out mathematically why they're doing it. Like I said, but HOAs are a bunch of Nazis. I think one of the worst inventions in the history of mankind was an HOA. Well, HOAs are based on the concept that property value is a right and use is a privilege.
But they can still sell it.
Other way around.
Get the full value and pay the seller, right? The remainder.
It ain't worth that much.
Right.
Oh, so they are upside down.
Yeah, they're upside down.
Okay.
That's why. Yeah, I'd say you missed that part. Yeah, they're upside down. So they're literally walking into a negative situation. If I was on the board of that HOI, I would be voting against that.
Well, they'd probably have to make it like, okay, we have to do it just in case somebody else acts and so.
So anything that's going to affect title clearly must be disclosed. Anything that may material affect also the ability to deliver title in escrow. What would an example of that be? Tax liens. You know, so if the IRS is alive and well, if seller has IRS problems and they find out the property's in escrow, the IRS likes to show up sometimes and say, good, we've been waiting for our money. When you close escrow, we're getting it. And so those kind of things have to be disclosed.
What
Yeah.
I've seen lately is loan mods, people that did some type of a modification and they had some type of like a silent
Tail.
Yeah.
Yeah, it have to be disclosed. And I've seen tales from loan modifications, little things that everybody forgot they did, but there was something they signed that can get really nasty down towards closing. All right, what else has to be disclosed? And again, this is the top of the list: public health and safety. And that raises some real questions. What about if you live in a neighborhood that's had 10 drive-by shootings in the last 2 years? Does that have to be disclosed? You don't, per stigmatized property, ARS 322156, you do not have to disclose felony or misdemeanor on the property. But gunfire, the crime is where the bullet starts, not where it ends up. So would that be material, public health and safety? Yeah, that would have to be disclosed, and there's court precedent in another state to back it up.
But how do you know? How do you know it's going to happen again? Though? It could be a gang that moved out of the neighborhood.
But when it comes to, and then you can, obviously you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but the whole point of seller property disclosure statement is to know or to disclose what you know of the property since you've lived there.
That might affect what they pay for the property. And drive-by shootings, number of them in the last year, would affect what I'm gonna pay for the property. The fact that it may never happen again is not gonna make me pay you any more for the property. You're gonna take a hit. We actually had someone wanted to cancel listing because the next door neighbor had two shootings, and they didn't want to disclose it. We're like, you have to. And they didn't like that, and we explained to them the consequences, because if they sold that house, didn't disclose that, the next time they came and missed and killed a kid sleeping in that house, they're in deep. And obviously, anything, like I said earlier, when it comes to disclosure, if it's safety, it moves to the front of the list. I mean, we had some great, this gets, you want to talk philosophical law? There's some great philosophical legal arguments in our business that have come up here that I never freaking thought I would ever have to deal with. And in my weird world of let's theoretically come up with something else can go wrong, which is what I do in my head all day, this would never cross my mind. We had at one point in the last 10 years, we've had 3 serial killers. And they all had one thing in common. They were extremely territorial. The last one was in basically Maryvale, that area of town. Killed a bunch of people. If you sold a house in that part of town, should someone know that there's an active serial killer, listen, we had the ones in South Phoenix. You know, you had the 2 random recreational violence guys that just decided it was fun to go around and kill people. And then you had that, what's his name, the rapist murderer.
We also had the highway sniper, or I think everybody was
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Well, I don't know how you disclose that, but he was territorial as well. He tended to be on I-10 West. The bottom line is I had this discussion with brokers, you know, big-time brokers at big companies, and we came up with a response to that is, we don't know. I mean, that would have to go to court before I could advise you how to disclose it. But on the other hand, if you didn't disclose, it turns out you live next door to that person, and that person killed you, yeah, they got issues. So here's what I say about disclosure. It's physically impossible to over-disclose. Really stupid to under-disclose. Better to pursue the impossible than live with the consequences of the stupid. Because the consequences of the stupid are financial liability. All right. Okay. Seller wants seller disclosed to buyer brokers any material latent defects concerning property, excluding opinions of value displaying material effects. Consideration paid by the buyer. Seller warrants payment in full will be made for all labor, professional, etc. I'm not going to get into that. That's all. That if they have any work done, they're going to pay for it, subject to the mechanics liens laws. There are exceptions to seller disclosure. One is the stigmatized property law, ARS 322156. And here's the important thing about stigmatized property. First of all, everybody upload a copy of that thing. If you don't have one, I got about 14 screenshots or things for my my presentations. I'll be happy to send you one. That's a law that should actually be sent to every buyer. It's in title company buyer books. It's referenced in the buyer advisory, but stigmatized property law for me is a very scary area because it's an exception to the absolute. I keep saying the seller has the absolute duty to disclose anything material, right? And then I go, unless it falls into these categories. And the reason this is a big deal, if these categories were something that nobody ever gave a damn about anyway, that'd be okay. But these are things, a couple of them, clearly material to many buyers, and one of them is material to any buyer that's not insane. One is the side of a death, suicide, natural death, homicide, or crime, a felony. Okay, that's an exception, but that's for the property. So if someone's sitting on the street shooting at my house, I still have to disclose that because the crime is where the bullet starts. But if and the most common one will be, because this is the most common interpersonal assault crime, if it's a domestic abuse. If she punches him in the face and the police come, that does not have to be disclosed, okay? If someone died there, and why this is a big deal and your buyers need to be made aware of this, I've never talked to a buyer after closing because I'm like, hey, I bought a house recently, how was it? Hey, I always say that, they tell you about stigmatized property, they explain this to you. Every time we get deer in the headlights, no one's telling their buyers this. And when buyers find out, there might be sex offender in the neighborhood, when you get to that one, that pretty much freaks people out. But there are a lot of people that take this whole death on the property thing very seriously. I'm part Cherokee and Seminole Indian. The Cherokees are very spiritualistic, and they don't want to occupy property where someone died. There's a sacred nature to it. There are many religions that look at it that way. There are people like my daughter who watch too many damn horror films and doesn't want to live where someone died because she thinks they're going to reach up to her pillow and bite her head off in the middle of the night. For which I laugh, because I already told you not to watch those stupid things. They're going to mess you up. And she's an awesome person, but she does not like the thought of people dying there. So it doesn't have to be disclosed, which means if it's material to the buyer, the seller's not going to disclose, doesn't have to disclose, and the buyer needs to figure it out for themselves. Finding out if someone died there is really difficult. Good news is we're supposed to be getting basically a website that will be www.whocroakedhere.com, and you'll be able to find out where the death certificate was signed, where the death was they were declared dead or whatever it is. One of the problems is a lot of times they're not declared dead until they get to the hospital, even though they're been rotten for 3 days. Yeah. Okay, the other one is, and we're just going to laugh at this one. Someone who had HIV or AIDS lived there. Guess when this law was written? Actually, before a lot of you were born. This law was written right when the AIDS epidemic was there, and we all believed, and there was a legitimate fear based on the nature of the disease that it might go airborne and be the plague. And so there was a lot of paranoia, but even then we knew you can't get HIV from a doorknob. You can't get HIV so we need to get that out of there. Now we all know a heck of a lot better than that. But this law was written in 1990, and for those who weren't around, it was kind of freaky, because I had a lot of gay friends, and a few of them just up and died on us. Scary time. The last one is the big dog. They do not have to disclose, and the buyer must be made aware of this, because this is material to every person on the planet. Must disclose if it's within the vicinity of a sex offender. And by the way, that's considered basically a mile, because that's their declaration area. A sex offender must make sure everyone within a mile knows they're a sex offender, or somehow way they do it or whatever. But is there anyone to whom sex offender is not material? I'm going to use my friend Mark here as an example. Mark's, you may have noticed, is a fairly large fella. The odds of Mark being a victim of a sex crime by anything other...
You find me every time I come in your office. This guy looks at me like he wants to date me.
But the odds of him being a victim of sex crime by anything other than a pickup truck is pretty small. But Mark is living in the same sex offender material to you. Of course. Yeah. Property value. You've got neighbors. You would hate to hear that somebody hurt one of your neighbors. You got kids in the neighborhood. I mean, I got grandkids. I'm the same way. I'm probably safe outside of prison. But I got neighbors, I got grandkids, I got daughters that come over, I got a girlfriend I live with. I would really want to know if there's a sex offender in my neighborhood. And by the way, let me give you the list of people who don't want to know.
Sex offenders?
That was the list. In other words, nobody don't want to know this one. Yeah.
So I have to disclosure? I mean, the sex
A
offender?
seller, here's what stigmatized property law is. It's a liability shield. I, broker, and my seller cannot be held liable, have the contract rescinded. You can cancel during the inspection period, which is why this is a go figure it out for yourself thing. But you cannot sue me. You cannot take the house back, make me buy the house back. You can't do anything because I failed to disclose. It's a liability shield for non-disclosure.
But I'm supposed to disclose?
If you represent a buyer and you know, obviously, you're not disclosing it to them, you need to make sure all buyers go to a good sex offender website and do their research.
What she's saying, that the seller's not obligated to have to disclose that.
No, they have a liability shield for non-disclosure.
Right.
Now, if they give you permission in writing, you can disclose, which I've had that situation. Sellers were selling because a really bad sex offender moved in and they had like 64 children. And they had a 7-bedroom house, if I recall right, that was obviously going to be sold to someone with 64 children.
Yeah.
And the reason they moved out of their house into a hotel. These people had some bucks. And they said, oh, no. We're not going to let someone buy this house and move children in there when we moved out. So we got written authorization. Good news is that pervert went back to jail. Yeah. But get a copy of the law. Like I said, I'll email it to you and just have that as standard part of stuff that you send your buyers. Because it's really not fair to buyers that they don't know that. And as far as sex offender websites, My favorite sex offender website, where I find my favorite sex offenders, no. I consider the best sex offender website as far as, because they're all the same, but some are easier to navigate. FamilyWatchdog.us. It's awesome.
What?
All right, any questions? How are we doing time-wise? 4 o'clock?
That's 4.
Yeah, it's 4.
4.
Right on. We're not going to get through section 6 today. We may not even get to it.
That's supposed to end at 4.
Do what?
It's supposed to end at 4.
Is it? Did she put 4 on it again?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, good, perfect. Then let me get through buyer warranties, because buyer warranties is easy. Buyer warrants one thing. I will paraphrase. They have the ability to close, which means buyer's warranty is all tied to what?
Finance.
Their money. You know, if a cash buyer has 500 grand in bank to buy a $400,000 house, and the IRS comes and takes 110 grand, and now they have 390 in the bank, they need to disclose that. Buyer can't cancel. Seller can't cancel, but they're disclosing a change, and obviously then they would have the obligation to get that extra money, or they'd lose earnest money. But they have to disclose. Here's the real thing about this. Our contract is so buyer weighted, there is no downside. No downside for a buyer disclosure. And here's the story I like to use. 10 days in, you have my loan status update. It has 32 to 35 all completed. Everything is good, and me and my significant other, I'm going to use Fred and Wilma. I'm Fred Flintstone. Me and Wilma are dual income, absolutely fully qualified until day 12. In which case, income number 2, Wilma, loses her job. Now, there's no way we can qualify because we were a 2-income qual. I have to notify the seller and the seller's agent that my buyer lost their job and they may not qualify. What can the seller do at that point? Not a damn thing till 3 days prior to close of escrow when we don't sign docs. You can request a new LSU, but guess what? A request for an LSU is not curable. That's why when I get into section 2 next time, I always talk about how to threshold the loan status update. And the buyer is also warranting, and I don't even need to read that one, that they are not depending on any verbal representations. Okay? That's talking about you. And I speak on behalf of every broker in town, but certainly this company, we like to see the word none typed on that line. So when you say, are you depending on verbal representations, and they say no, write none. Any questions?
Can I have your email, please?
My email is jdyer, J-D-Y-E-R, at myhomegroup.com. Don't get no easier than that.
J-D?
J-D-Y-E-R. J Dyer. All right. Any questions? Well, good. We finished number 5. We'll do number 6 in 2 weeks. I'm happy to say I'm leaving for vacation tomorrow, and if those of you that I see all the time, I won't see you for a while, because I'm going to a place where the other day, when it was 112 here, they had a little storm blow through. I looked on, because I'm watching Weather Channel, because I looked on there and I'm like, it was 56 degrees. It was exactly half as hot as it was here. I just say that so you'll all be jealous. Have a great week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.